Growing up, I always wondered why my parents seemed to love my brother more than me. But I never imagined that the answer would come in the form of an $800 monthly bill handed to me on my 18th birthday. While my brother continued living, rent-free in the room right next to mine, the morning after my high school graduation party, I found an envelope slipped under my bedroom door. Inside was a typed letter on my father's company letterhead, as if I were a business client rather than his son. "Congratulations on reaching adulthood," it began. "Effective immediately, your monthly contribution to household expenses will be $800. Due on the 1st of each month." I read it 3 times before the words sank in. $800. I had exactly $247 in my savings account from my part-time job at the local grocery store. My hands were shaking as I walked downstairs to the kitchen, where my parents sat drinking coffee and reading the Sunday paper like it was any ordinary morning. My mother looked up with that bright smile she always wore when she was about to deliver news she knew I wouldn't like. "Oh, good. You found your letter," she said cheerfully. "Your father and I think it's important for you to learn responsibility before college starts in the fall." I looked around the kitchen, suddenly seeing everything differently. The granite countertops they'd installed last year, the stainless steel appliances, the breakfast nook where my brother sat eating cereal while scrolling through his phone, completely unbothered by the conversation happening around him. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm starting college in 3 months. How am I supposed to pay rent and tuition?" My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "You'll figure it out. Character is built through adversity." The casual dismissal in his voice hit me harder than any argument could have. This wasn't a discussion. This was a decree. "What about Tyler?" I asked, gesturing toward my 17-year-old brother, who was now watching us with mild interest, like we were a TV show he might change the channel on. "Is he going to start paying rent when he turns 18 too?" The look that passed between my parents was so brief, I almost missed it. Almost. My mother's smile faltered for just a second before returning full force. "Tyler's situation is different," she said. "He's planning to stay home for community college. It makes more sense for him to save his money." Different. That one word would echo in my mind for years to come. Tyler's situation was different because Tyler was different. Tyler was the athlete, the charmer, the one who could do no wrong. Tyler was the son who made our parents beam with pride at family gatherings, while I was the one they had to explain. "Oh, he's very studious," they'd say about me, in the same tone people use to describe a well-behaved but unremarkable dog. I spent the rest of that summer working double shifts at the grocery store, picking up extra hours wherever I could find them, while other kids my age were enjoying their last free summer before college. I was pricing canned goods and dealing with difficult customers, all so I could hand over most of my paycheck to my parents at the end of each month. The first time I gave my mother that $800, she counted it twice and tucked it into her purse without a word of acknowledgement. College started that fall. Suddenly my world became a juggling act that would have impressed a circus performer. I was carrying 18 credit hours, working 25 hours a week at a campus coffee shop, and somehow still expected to come up with rent money for my childhood bedroom. My grades suffered. My social life was non-existent. I watched other students join clubs, attend parties, and build the relationships that would define their college experience, while I calculated whether I could afford both lunch and dinner on any given day. Meanwhile, Tyler was thriving. Without the burden of rent, he could focus entirely on his studies and his social life. He joined the baseball team, dated regularly, and maintained a 3.8 GPA that my parents proudly announced to anyone who would listen. When family friends asked about me, the conversation would quickly pivot to Tyler's latest achievements. I became the opening act for my brother's success story. The breaking point came during my sophomore year. I had been working 30 hours a week while maintaining a full course load, and my body finally gave out. I collapsed during my shift at the coffee shop and woke up in the campus health center with exhaustion and dehydration. The doctor told me I needed to reduce my stress levels immediately. When I called home to explain why I might be late with rent that month, my father's response was ice cold. "We all have responsibilities, son. Figure it out." That night, lying in my narrow dorm bed with an IV bruise on my arm and $23 in my bank account, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to ask my parents for understanding anymore. I wasn't going to beg for the same treatment. My brother received without question. I was going to find another way. The first step was the hardest. I stopped going home. Thanksgiving came and went, and I worked extra shifts instead of sitting around a dinner table where I felt like a paying guest. Christmas break meant more work hours, while Tyler enjoyed his vacation. My mother called, her voice hurt and confused. "The family isn't the same without you here," she said. I almost laughed. The family had never included me in any meaningful way. Spring semester brought new opportunities. I had connected with a professor who ran a small tutoring business, and he offered me a position that paid significantly better than my coffee shop job. For the first time since turning 18, I could see a path forward that didn't involve choosing between textbooks and meals. More importantly, I started meeting other students who came from backgrounds of financial struggle. I wasn't alone in my experience, and that realization was both comforting and infuriating. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, let me know by commenting different below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, because sometimes the people who are supposed to support us become our greatest obstacles. One of these new friends, Marcus, came from a family where both parents worked multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. He looked at me with genuine confusion when I explained my situation. "Wait, let me get this straight," he said. "Your parents have money, but they're charging you rent while your brother lives free? They're not even helping with your college expenses?" When I nodded, he shook his head slowly. "Man, that's not teaching responsibility, that's just cruel." Hearing someone else validate what I'd been feeling was like finally being able to breathe. After holding my breath for 2 years, it wasn't normal. It wasn't fair. And it certainly wasn't love, no matter how my parents tried to frame it. Validation gave me the courage to start making changes that went beyond just accepting my situation. Threw myself into every opportunity I could find. I started freelance tutoring on weekends, picked up graphic design projects through the Student Employment Office, and even began flipping items I found at garage sales on eBay. Every dollar I earned felt like a small victory, a step toward independence that my parents couldn't control or take credit for. My grades improved because I was no longer emotionally drained from constant financial stress and family disappointment by my junior year. Something remarkable had happened. I was actually ahead financially compared to many of my peers. They were accumulating student debt. I had been forced to find creative ways to generate income. The skills I developed out of necessity, budgeting, negotiating, finding multiple revenue streams, were serving me better than any business class could have taught. Tyler, meanwhile, was struggling with the transition to real responsibility. He had switched majors twice, his grades were slipping, and he seemed lost, without the constant praise and support he'd grown accustomed to. During one of our rare phone conversations, he mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to choose a career path. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. The contrast became even starker during my senior year. I had built a small but profitable tutoring business, was graduating with honors despite everything, and had already secured a position. At a tech startup that appreciated my entrepreneurial background, Tyler was extending his college experience for a 5th year, still unsure of his direction, and still living rent-free at home. Our parents. Pride in my achievements was complicated by their obvious discomfort with how I'd succeeded despite their lack of support. At my graduation dinner, my father made a speech about how proud he was of my independence and determination. The irony was apparently lost on him, but it wasn't lost on me. I had become successful not because of their parenting philosophy, but in spite of it. The tech startup turned out to be exactly the opportunity I needed. The founders valued hustle over pedigree, results over connections. Within 6 months, I had proven myself indispensable. Within a year, I was promoted to a leadership position with equity in the company. The financial literacy I'd been forced to develop, combined with the work ethic born from desperation, made me exceptionally good at what I did. Here's where the story takes a turn that even I didn't see coming. Subscribe now, because the best part is just ahead. I wasn't just succeeding. I was building something that would soon shock everyone who had ever doubted me. I started investing aggressively but intelligently. Every bonus, every raise, every side income stream went toward building wealth rather than upgrading my lifestyle. While my coworkers bought expensive cars and designer clothes, I drove a reliable used Honda and shopped at thrift stores. My apartment was modest but comfortable. Every penny saved was a penny invested in my future freedom. The real breakthrough came when our startup was acquired by a larger company. My equity stake, combined with my savings and investments, suddenly put me in a financial position I had only dreamed of. 26 years old, I had enough money to buy a house with cash. Not a small starter home, but a real house in a neighborhood I'd admired since childhood. Tyler was still living at home, working part-time at a sporting goods store, and trying to find himself. My parents had stopped charging him rent altogether, reasoning that he needed time to figure out his path. The double standard that had once made me furious now just seemed pathetic. They had taught me to be strong by treating me harshly, and they had taught Tyler to be weak by treating him gently. The house I found was perfect. A 4-bedroom colonial in the same school district where I'd grown up, with a 2-car garage, finished basement and backyard that backed up to conservation land. The asking price was $485,000, and I could afford to pay cash without touching my retirement accounts or emergency fund. The real estate agent couldn't hide her amazement when I showed up to closing with a certified check instead of mortgage paperwork. I decided to tell my family about the house purchase at Sunday dinner, a tradition I had recently started attending again now that I was secure enough in my success to handle their reactions. Tyler was there, of course, along with my parents and my aunt and uncle who often joined us. The conversation was flowing around typical family topics: Tyler's latest job interview, my mother's garden, my father's golf game. "I have some news to share," I said during a natural break in the conversation. All eyes turned to me with the polite attention families give to routine announcements. "I bought a house this week." My mother smiled and nodded. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey. Are you getting a good rate on your mortgage?" "Interest rates have been so unpredictable lately." "Actually," I said, savoring the moment, "I paid cash. No mortgage." The silence that followed was profound. My father's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Tyler looked confused, as if I had spoken in a foreign language. My aunt's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "Cash," my mother repeated slowly. "For a down payment?" "No, Mom. Cash for the entire house. $485,000. My uncle, who worked in real estate, leaned forward with genuine interest. "Jesus Christ, kid. What do you do? For work again?" My father shot him a look for the language, but he was clearly waiting for the answer too. I explained about the startup, the acquisition, the investments, the years of living below my means while building wealth. As I spoke, I watched my family's faces cycle through disbelief, amazement, and something that looked almost like embarrassment. Here was their difficult son, the one who had needed tough love and hard lessons, explaining how he had accumulated more wealth by age 26 than they had in their combined lifetimes. Tyler was the first to speak after I finished. "So you're rich now?" he asked, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Not jealousy exactly, but a kind of bewildered respect. "I'm financially secure," I corrected. "There's a difference." My father cleared his throat clearly, struggling with how to respond. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose all those years of paying rent taught you good financial habits after all." The audacity of that statement, the attempt to take credit for my success after years of making my life more difficult, should have made me angry. Instead, I just felt tired. "Okay, actually, Dad, the rent taught me that I couldn't depend on anyone else for my security. Everything I accomplished happened because I learned I was completely on my own." The rest of dinner was awkward, with conversations starting and stopping as everyone processed this new dynamic. I was no longer the struggling college student or the son who needed character-building exercises. I was the most financially successful person at the table, and nobody quite knew how to handle that shift. Over the following weeks, my parents' attitude toward me changed in subtle but noticeable ways. My mother started calling more often, asking for advice about investments and retirement planning. My father began including me in conversations about family finances and even asked my opinion on some business decisions. It was gratifying in a hollow way. I had finally earned their respect. But only after proving I didn't need it. Tyler's reaction was more complex. He seemed genuinely proud of my success, but also somewhat lost. The brother he'd always seen, as the family screw-up had somehow lapped him in every measurable way. He started asking me for advice about his own career path, and for the first time in our lives. I felt like the older brother I was supposed to be. The house itself became a symbol of everything I'd overcome. Every room I furnished, every improvement I made, every mortgage payment I didn't have to worry about was a reminder of how far I'd come from that 18-year-old kid counting coins to make rent. I hosted my first family dinner in my new home on Easter Sunday, and watching my parents marvel at the granite countertops and hardwood floors I'd paid for myself was sweeter than any revenge could have imagined. But the real transformation was in how I saw myself. For years I had internalized the message that I was somehow less deserving than Tyler, that I needed to work harder to earn the same love and support. Buying that house with cash wasn't just a financial achievement. It was proof that their assessment of me had been wrong. I wasn't the problem child who needed tough love. I was the strong one who could handle tough love and turn it into motivation. My relationship with my parents gradually improved, but it was built on new terms. I was no longer seeking their approval or trying to understand their favoritism. I had my own life, my own success, and my own sense of worth that didn't depend on their validation. When they offered unsolicited advice, I could listen politely and ignore it. When they criticized my choices, it rolled off me like water off a duck's back. Tyler eventually found his footing, landing a job in sales where his natural charm served him well. He moved out of our parents' house at 28 and started building his own independent life. Our relationship improved too, probably because I no longer resented the advantages he'd been given. He was dealing with the consequences of being coddled just as I had dealt with the consequences of being challenged. The most unexpected development was how my success influenced other family dynamics. My cousins started asking me for financial advice. Family friends wanted to know about my investment strategies. I became the person others looked to for guidance about money and career decisions. The role reversal was complete. I had gone from family burden to family resource. Looking back now, I can see that my parents' unequal treatment, as painful as it was, forced me to develop skills and resilience that served me well throughout my life. But I can also see that their favoritism toward Tyler did him no favors in the long run. They thought they were protecting him, but they were actually handicapping him for the real world. The house, bought with cash, became the foundation for even greater success. Having no mortgage payment freed up enormous amounts of money for additional investments. I bought rental properties, started a second business, and continued building wealth at a pace that amazed even me. By 30, I was truly wealthy by any reasonable standard. My parents now introduce me to their friends as our successful son, and they brag about my achievements with the same pride they once reserved for Tyler's report cards. It's validating. But it's also sad that it took financial success for them to see my worth. I wonder sometimes what our family dynamics would have been like if they had supported both their sons equally from the beginning. Tyler and I have grown closer as adults, bonded partly by our shared experience of navigating our parents' complicated love. He admits now that he was aware of the unfair treatment and felt guilty about it, but didn't know how to address it as a teenager. We joke sometimes about how I was paying rent while he was getting an allowance, but there's still a shadow of that old dynamic in our relationship. The financial success that started with that first house purchase has continued to grow. I've been able to help extended family members with college expenses, medical bills, and other financial emergencies. There's deep satisfaction in being the person others can turn to for help, especially knowing where I started. Every check I write to help a family member is a reminder of how far I've traveled from that 18-year-old with $247 in his savings account. My parents are older now, thinking about retirement and their own financial security. They've asked me for advice about their retirement planning, and I've been able to help them make better decisions about their investments and expenses. There's irony in the fact that the son they charged rent to is now helping them figure out how to afford their golden years. The house that started it all is still my home base, though I've since bought other properties and investments. Every morning when I wake up in a home I own outright, I remember that 18-year-old kid reading that rent bill and feeling like his world was ending. I wish I could tell him that the unfairness he was experiencing would actually become the catalyst for everything good that came after. Sometimes young people reach out to me for advice when they're dealing with similar family situations. I tell them what I wish someone had told me: unfair treatment from family is painful, but it doesn't define your worth or determine your future. The skills you develop when you're forced to be independent, resourcefulness, resilience, financial literacy, emotional strength, are gifts that will serve you for the rest of your life. What I've learned is that success is the best response to unfair treatment. Not success for the purpose of proving others wrong, but success because you deserve to live a life that reflects your true worth. The people who couldn't see your value when you needed their support will suddenly recognize it when you no longer need their approval. The relationship with my parents has settled into something more honest now. We can acknowledge the past without relitigating it constantly. They know they made mistakes, and I know they did what they thought was right at the time. Tyler and I have both forgiven them, though we've also both been shaped by their choices in ways that will last our entire lives. The house purchase that shocked my family was just the beginning. In the years since, I've built a portfolio of investments and businesses that provides true financial freedom. I work because I want to, not because I have to. I help family members because I can afford to, not because I'm obligated to. Make choices based on what's right for me, not what others expect or approve of. That $800 monthly rent that seemed so crushing when I was 18 taught me lessons that no business school could have provided. It taught me to be resourceful, to find multiple income streams, to live below my means, and to never depend on others for my security. Most importantly, it taught me that I was stronger than I knew and more capable than anyone believed. What's your story? Have you ever overcome family favoritism or unfair treatment to build something amazing? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might inspire someone else who's going through similar challenges. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe because I share more stories about overcoming adversity and building success against the odds. Your next inspiration is just one click away. So hit that subscribe button and join our community of people who refuse to let circumstances define their destiny.